Hey, book lovers! Welcome to another special Christmas edition of While I Read. I'm Katie Dodrell, and today we'll be talking about my favorite mysteries and thrillers to read at Christmas time. The last video I made was about my cozy Christmas books that I love, and I do like reading some cozier books at Christmas, but sometimes I get a little tired of those and I want something with a bit of a mystery to it, sometimes some excitement in it, and so that's what these books are all about. So, I'm going to tell you about 10 of my favorite mysteries or thrillers that I've read at Christmas time. Some of these are standalone books, but the majority of them are part of series. For the most part, I feel like you could just jump in the series with that book. So I'm going to start off talking about the cozier mysteries and then move into the grittier ones. All of the books that I'll talk about in this video are linked down below in the description. If you click on any of the links and buy the book through that link, then I'll get a small percentage of the proceeds as an Amazon affiliate at no extra charge to you. So if you're interested in these books, I would love for you to buy it and support my channel. The first book that is great to read at Christmas time is The Mystery of Mistletoe Hall by Benedict Brown. So this is part of the Lord Edgington Investigate series. It's number 4 in the series, but the author, Benedict Brown, makes clear in a note that this book can be read as a standalone whodunit. There are no spoilers for any other books in the series. So I jumped in with this book, and I actually haven't read any other books in this series. I need to. But Lord Edgington is a retired policeman, and this is set in 1925 in England, so the golden age of mysteries. And the books are actually from the point of view of Christopher, who is Lord Edgington's grandson. He's sort of the bumbling assistant to Lord Edgington. So Lord Edgington and his family have been invited to stay at Mistletoe Hall with one of Lord Edgington's former colleagues. And they're staying there over Christmas. But when they arrive, their host is not there. There are no servants there. The Mistletoe Hall is just deserted. There are some other guests who are arriving, and a lot of them are fairly famous. There's a famous race car driver, a famous comedian, a famous singer, and several others, and nobody really seems to know what's going on. But then bodies start turning up. And so Lord Edgington and Christopher have to figure out what was going on. I had a great time reading this book. It's set at Christmas time, so there's a lot about decorating the place for Christmas. Like at Mistletoe Hall, Christopher makes sure that it gets decorated for Christmas, that it has a Christmas tree and the other trappings of Christmas. While they're there, there's a big snowstorm and they get snowed in. So you can't beat that. Snowed in at a beautiful manor house in England over the holidays, and there's a murderer there who's killing people. So it was just a lot of fun to read. I really liked the portrayal of Lord Edgington and of Christopher. The other guests were interesting characters to read about. I did not figure out the mystery, and I thought the reveal at the end was really good. So The Mystery at Mistletoe Hall is a great book to read at Christmas time. The next mystery that's great to read at Christmas time is also on the cozier side, and that is Six Cats A-Slayin' by Miranda James. This is book number 10 in the Cat in the Stack series. And I will say that in this book, if you started off with this one, there would be some spoilers about the relationships in the book, that kind of thing. It doesn't bother me, but if you do decide to read this book, just know about that. So this series is about a librarian named Charlie Harris, who is a college librarian. Well, he's retired, but he works part-time as a college librarian at this college in a small town in Mississippi. So this book is set around Christmas time, and Charlie has a new neighbor named Jerry. He's invited to a party at her house. She's somebody who has already made herself somewhat unlikable, and at the party, guess what? She turns up dead. So Charlie, of course, as an amateur sleuth, has to figure out who the real killer is. Charlie, of course, has his pet Maine Coon cat, Diesel, hence the name of the series, the Cat in the Stack series. Diesel is always a fun part of all of these books. He doesn't really help Charlie solve the crime, but he's just always there. He goes to work with Charlie, he's at the party with Charlie, he goes everywhere with him, and he's just a fun part of the books to read about. Also in this book, Charlie finds 2 kittens on his doorstep with a note saying, please take care of them. So, of course, Charlie cares for the kittens, but another mystery in the book, in addition to the murder, is that he's trying to figure out who left the kittens on his doorstep. So the kittens make another fun addition to this book. How will Diesel take to the kittens? What will he think of them? And all of the funny antics of kittens just make this extra adorable. So this was a really fun Christmas book. I love Charlie. I love the other characters in this book, the townspeople in this small Mississippi town. Being a Southerner from a small town myself, I know people like the ones who are described in this book, so it was really good. Like I said, there might be some spoilers as far as who Charlie's in a relationship with and that kind of thing. They don't bother me, but if you feel like that would bother you, then just read all the other books in the series first before you read this one. But Six Cats A-Slayin' is a great addition to the Cat in the Stacks mystery series. The next Christmas mystery that I'll talk about is The Study of Secrets by Cynthia Cunn, which is the 5th book in the Lila McLean academic mystery series. And it may be the last book in the series. This one was published in 2020, and there haven't been any others published in that series since then. But I hope it's not the last one, because I have really enjoyed this series. I'm actually not done with this book. I'm currently reading it right now. I read the other 4 books in the series this year. So this one is set during the Christmas season, and I'm just going to read the synopsis on the back. There could be nowhere more fitting for English professor Lila McLean to spend her sabbatical than in a proper Victorian mansion. The whimsical Callahan house seems to have materialized from the pages of the mystery novel she is researching, with its enchanting towers, cozy nooks, and charming library. Unfortunately, it also features a body in the study. So Lila is going to have to solve this mystery that has happened while she is on her sabbatical researching the author that she is trying to write her tenure thesis about. So I've loved the other books in the series. In this one, as I said, it's set just before Christmas, and so there are lots of things about Christmas food and Christmas decorations and that kind of thing. Lila is a great character to me. She's very smart, being an English professor, and very tenacious. She has a great vocabulary. This book is, the woman that she's staying with is a writer, so I love books about writers as well. So I've really loved this whole series, and I'm enjoying this last book in it. It is set around Christmas time. Like the other cozy mysteries that I've talked about, you could pick this one up. You might find out some spoilers about Lila and her relationships, but again, to me, I don't think that would matter, but all the books in the series are good, so I definitely recommend the whole series and this one as one to read around Christmas. The next Christmas mystery that I'll talk about is another book by Cynthia Cunn, and that is In the Event of Murder, which is book number 2 in the Starlit Bookshop mystery series. So this series is about a woman named Emma Stars, who is helping her aunt and sister to run the family bookstore. Emma also serves as an event planner. And in this book, she is attending a gala event at the library in their Colorado town. And this event takes place during the week between Christmas and New Year's, maybe on New Year's Eve, I'm not exactly sure. So at a tea preceding the event, one of the guests of honor is found murdered. And so Emma ends up taking over as the event planner and also trying to figure out who the murderer is and why this took place. So I've read the first book in this series and loved it. It was set at Halloween. This one is set at Christmas time, right after Christmas, between Christmas and New Year's. I've actually been saving this one to read it during the week between Christmas and New Year's because that's when it takes place, and that's the kind of person that I am. So I'm looking forward to reading this one because I've loved Cynthia Cunn's other books, the Lila McLean academic series, and I loved the first book in this Starlit Bookshop mystery series. So I'm looking forward to reading this right after Christmas. The next two books that I'll talk about both feature famous literary detectives. The first one is Hercule Poirot's Silent Night by Sophie Hannah. This is book number 5 in the new Hercule Poirot mysteries that Sophie Hannah is writing. So it's book number 5 in the series, but there are really no spoilers. I jumped right into the series with this book. You probably know who Poirot is. He's the famous detective who Agatha Christie brought to life, and Sophie Hannah is writing new books featuring him. So in this book, the narrator is a policeman named Edward Catchpool, and he has been working with Poirot. And so Edward's mother shows up and is begging Edward and Poirot to come to this crumbling mansion in the countryside that's basically crumbling off a cliff into the sea. And Edward's mother comes and begs them to come there because something mysterious is going on. One person has been murdered, and Cynthia, Edward's mother, is convinced that one of the occupants of the house that's falling off into the sea is going to be the next person who's murdered. It's right before Christmas, and Poirot and Catchpool were planning on spending a quiet Christmas in London, but Cynthia is extremely persistent, and so they do end up going to stay at this house and try to figure out what's going on, who the murderer is, and why the murderer would be interested in murdering someone else. So when they get to the house, they have to help with the Christmas decorations. Poirot actually makes Edward help with decorating Christmas trees, which is really hilarious. And it's just a fun Christmas mystery, seeing Poirot use his little gray cells to figure out what's going on. And then the reveal at the end is really good. And Edward Catchpool, and he's always in awe of Poirot and what Poirot can do, but he's also somewhat annoyed by Poirot and what Poirot makes him do. So it's a really good Christmas mystery, and I loved it. The next Christmas mystery featuring a famous literary detective is Sherlock Holmes and the Christmas Demon. This is in author James Lovegrove's Sherlock Holmes series, which he's been writing, I think, for about 10 years now. I had never read any other books in that series. I think this is about the 6th one in the series. But again, it's Sherlock Holmes. I don't think there are really any spoilers in it. So in this book, Sherlock and his assistant, Dr. Watson, are approached by a young woman named Eve Allerthorpe, who tells them that she is about to come into a large sum of money, a big inheritance, but she thinks that she's being haunted by a Christmas demon. This demon is called the Black Thuric, and she grew up hearing stories about this from her mother. He's basically the anti-Santa Claus, kind of like Krampus. He comes at Christmas, and if children are bad, he leaves them a little bundle of twigs. And there are even darker stories about him kidnapping children and taking them back to his cave and eating them. And so she grew up hearing these scary stories about the Black Thuric. Eve's mother took her own life a year before, and they're not sure exactly what caused this, but now suddenly Eve has been getting little bundles of twigs, just like what the Black Thuric would leave. And one night she even thought she saw the Black Thuric outside of the castle walls. So Eve begs Sherlock and Watson to come to her home in Yorkshire and investigate what's going on. So Sherlock and Watson do. They come there, and it's in the days leading up to Christmas time. So there are the family members of Eve who are there, her immediate family, and then a larger family group comes to celebrate Christmas. There is lots of discussion of the Christmas foods that the cook is preparing, the Christmas games that they play, the Christmas decorations that are put up in the castle or in the home, which is big enough to pretty much be a castle. So it was a really good Christmas book to me, pretty creepy in what it said about the Black Thuric, and the way that Holmes and Watson investigated it was great. I love both the characters of Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson, so I felt like this book was a really good addition to the Sherlock Holmes series and a great mystery to read at Christmas time. So now we're moving away from the cozy mysteries and moving into grittier thriller territory. And the first one in this category that I want to talk about is Dead by Dawn by Paul Doiron. This is, I believe, book number 12 in the Mike Bowditch series. So again, if you start with this when you are jumping in late in the series, this was actually the first book that I read in the Mike Bowditch series. And after reading it, I went back and read all of the other books in the series because I liked it so much. You might get some slight spoilers about Mike and his relationships, but it didn't bother me. So Mike Bowditch is a game warden in Maine. And this book it's told in alternating timelines. So in the first chapter, it starts off as Mike is ambushed and ends up driving his Jeep into this cold, nearly frozen river. And he has to figure out how to survive. Like, he has to get out of his Jeep and, figure out what he can do to keep himself alive. He also has his wolf. It's like a part dog, part wolf that he has been kind of rehabilitating. And the wolf is in the back of his truck in a cage. And so he has to figure out how he's going to rescue the wolf and all of that. So it starts off right into the action of what's going on. Then in the next chapter, it tells about the beginning of that day and how Mike Bowditch had started his day. And then you go back and forth between those timelines and you find out what happened to bring Mike Bowditch to this point where someone has ambushed him and is doing their best to kill him. And so you find out what he was investigating. All through that day, he has been going around talking to different people who may have been involved in this crime that was committed. It was a murder that was committed years ago that he has been asked to look into. And obviously somebody doesn't want him looking into it and doesn't like what he's finding out. So the whole time that you're reading, you're wondering which of these people that he's talking to is responsible for the predicament that he's in now. And it's also very suspenseful as you read the parts where he's trying to survive. You're wondering, what is he going to do next? He has to fight nature, but then he also has to fight against people who are after him. So, and it's set at Christmas time. I guess I should have mentioned that since this is the video about Christmas thrillers, but the homes that he visits, you read about the different types of Christmas decorations that they have. He goes to a mansion, that's just beautiful and elegant, and then he also ends up in the trailer park, and both of those places and their Christmas decorations are described perfectly. And so it's just a great thriller and a great Christmas book, and I highly recommend it. So the next book that I'll talk about is So Pretty It Hurts, which is about number 6 or 7, something like that, in the Bailey Weggins series by Kate White. So Bailey Weggins is a true crime journalist. This book takes place in early December. Bailey has been invited by her friend to go to a house party at the country home of this rich music mogul. So she and her friend go and stay at this house for what they hope is going to be a relaxing weekend. It's a barn that's been converted into a pretty luxurious home. It's got a big Christmas tree. There are going to be lavish meals. There's a cook on site to cook things for them. There are going to be hikes through the woods surrounding it. There's a big snowstorm coming in, so it seems like it's going to be a relaxing weekend. There are some pretty glamorous guests there. One of them is a model named Devon Barr, and she's very famous. She is super thin and very beautiful, and she also seems pretty standoffish and rude, but she does approach Bailey at one point and let her know that she's worried. She says something like, "Help me, they're going to kill me," or something like that. And then later, Devon's body is found. She has been killed. So Bailey has to start figuring out who actually did it, because as a true crime journalist, Bailey is also a super sleuth. So they're there at this isolated house. They're not able to get out. They're snowed in there at the house for a while, and they know that there's probably a murderer there with them. So Bailey starts trying to figure out what happened. Later on in the story, they do get out of that house. The snow finally goes away, and Bailey's able to go back to New York, and her investigations continue in New York. So this was a good story that takes place around Christmas time. It talks about this isolated house that's all decorated for Christmas with these glamorous people staying there, and then a murder happens. So that part was fun. I always love Bailey and her investigations. Again, since this is in the middle of the series, there might be some spoilers about Bailey's relationships, but I don't think you'll have a problem just jumping right in and starting off with this one. It'll probably make you want to go back and read the other books in the series. So this was a good mystery that featured some Christmas elements. The next Christmassy thriller that I'll talk about is The Family Game by Catherine Steadman. This is actually a standalone book. It's not part of a series. So this book is about a woman named Harriet, Harry for short. She is an author, and as the book starts, she is getting engaged to a man named Edward Hallback, who is very rich, think like Vanderbilt's kind of wealthy, or at least his family is. Edward says that he's still friendly with his family, but he's mostly severed ties with them. But now that he's gotten engaged, they're wanting to be involved with him more. And so this book starts right around Thanksgiving. And so Harriet and Edward go to the family Thanksgiving, and while they're there, Edward's father slips a cassette tape to Harry. And when she listens to it, she finds that he has basically confessed to a crime on it. And she doesn't understand why he would have given her this cassette tape. But Harriet ends up getting really involved with this family, trying to figure out what it is that happened. She also starts attending more family gatherings and finds out that this family has some pretty creepy things that they do. One of my favorite chapters is set at their celebration of Krampusnacht, when basically Krampus comes and chases people around, and it's supposed to be fun, but it's really creepy. And then the climax of it occurs on Christmas Eve at the family's isolated estate in New England, where Harry and Edward go to spend Christmas Eve with the family, and it turns out there is another creepy game that's going to take place that night. So this was a really fun book. As I said, it's set, around Thanksgiving and then ends right around Christmas. So you get to read a lot about the different traditions of this rich but pretty insane family. There's lots of parts that have to do with Christmas decorations and Christmas foods and that kind of thing. And it's also very creepy, but to me, it was a really good, fun book. So the last book that I'll tell you about is actually not set at Christmas, but part of the book is set on New Year's Eve of 1999. That book is The Night Shift by Alex Finley, and this is a standalone thriller. So New Year's Eve 1999, I remember it well. It was my senior year of high school, and I can remember how we were all worried about Y2K. We were worried that all the computers were going to crash, banks would fail, elevators would come falling down, planes would fall out of the sky. We were just terrified of what would happen. Not really terrified, but we all kind of wondered, is this really going to happen? And of course, none of these predicted disasters actually happened. But in this book, it's set New Year's Eve, 1999, at a Blockbuster in the small town of Linden, New Jersey. There are four teenage girls who are working there that night, and someone comes in and murders three of those girls. There's only one survivor. So the police quickly identify a suspect, but he vanishes and is never seen again. Then 15 years later, there is another murder at an ice cream shop in that town that's eerily similar to this first murder, and they think it might be the same person who committed the Blockbuster murders. So this book is told in three separate points of view. One of them is the girl who survived the Blockbuster murders. One of them is the brother of the original suspect who think that the police are wrong in suspecting his brother. And then the third is an FBI agent who is investigating and trying to figure out what happened. So we get, chapters in the present day, but then we also go back to that 1999, that New Year's Eve. And so I really love the 90s nostalgia. It reminds me of when I was a teenager in the 90s. This book is definitely scary. It's also very suspenseful. I was caught off guard by how the book ended. So it's not a Christmas book, but it is kind of a New Year's Eve thriller. So that's it for my list of Christmas and holiday mysteries and thrillers. Please let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them, or let me know any good Christmas mystery thrillers that you would like to recommend. If you liked this video and want more book recommendations and reviews, please subscribe to my channel. Now, go sing Silent Night while I read.